After 20 years of growing a business, you're like, things are working. And then, bam, something awful happens and it stops working. What do you do? When I stopped doing creative practices, I started to kind of swim around that kind of danger zone of the beginning of a depression. I ended up having people crying because they just have never had a chance to talk to people about their struggle. Like, this is where we need to talk about this stuff.
For too long, entrepreneurs and business owners have been told they have to choose between profit and purpose. If you're tired of burning out, done chasing someone else's version of success, and ready to grow with more purpose, prosperity, and peace of mind, you're in the right place. Because every business has the potential to do good and do well. I'm Chase Friedman, and this is In Pursuit of Purpose, where strategy meets soul.
What do you do when the business you built around your values starts to actually challenge and test those values in real life? Because it's super easy to start off with this grand vision, this beautiful plan, this beautiful mission, but then shit hits the fan, right? It's one thing to say that you want to build something meaningful when the vision is fresh and it's just in your head. It's not living out loud quite yet. The mission sounds good. Everyone's nodding along. It looks great on paper. But it's another thing entirely when life, business, challenges, curveballs are thrown your way, right? Real struggles and challenges we have to face as entrepreneurs. When payroll is due, when clients become complicated, is a nice word to put it. The market is shifting. The easy money is not always exactly aligned, right? Maybe you're saying yes to a few projects that you probably shouldn't or regret later on. And then suddenly your values are not just words on the website anymore. They're like a decision that you have to make, that you have to stand firm and set boundaries around. That's where conviction actually shows up. Not when everything is working, when shit hits the fan. So today I'm sitting down with filmmaker, entrepreneur, and founder Greg Hemmings to talk about what it really means to stay the course when the course gets really freaking hard. How to build a business that doesn't betray the reason you started it. And why purpose really only matters if you can walk the talk and survive through that pressure test, if it stands up to the hardest moments. So Greg is a filmmaker, he's an entrepreneur, he's a storyteller, and he's a founder of Hemmings House and Hemmings Films, where he spent his career creating film, television, brand storytelling work, all of which is rooted in incredible impact. He's a member of 1% for the Planet and the B Corp. He's committed to positive change, and he's got some really incredible passion behind the work he does. But what I'm most interested in today is not just the work that Greg is creating, it's the conviction behind it when shit gets real. The moments where purpose and mission get tested and expensive. And as a founder, how do we decide what kind of business we're building and what are we willing to do to stand up for it and protect it? Greg Hemmings, pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for making the time and being here.
Chase, what a treat. I always want to say longtime listener, lifetime fan. I'm a new time listener. And man, I listened to 2 podcasts of yours in the last couple of days. Awesome podcasts. So I'm so thrilled to be here, man.
You're very kind. It's about to get better. Look at that.
Yeah.
Just no pressure. Yeah, long time, first time, right? But in this case, it's the other way around.
Yes, exactly. First time, long time.
So you and I, recent, let's just call it friends, acquaintances, but kind of kindred spirits in a few different ways. We connected through 1% for the Planet that we're both members of, and we drink that Kool-Aid because it's good for our soul and good for the planet. I was ruminating on our first conversation, and a lot of what you shared with me about your background, your story was super inspiring and like obviously a perfect fit for the topic of this show. As a purpose-driven business owner, founder, filmmaker, storyteller, it's a beautiful pursuit, but it doesn't always go according to plan. Like how much like making a film, right? You know, my background is in filmmaking, how much like you plan for however long making this beautiful vision and this creation. And all of a sudden you step on set and it's like, throw out the script, throw out the budget, throw out the plan. So this is going to be, I hope this chat is going to be a little bit about uncovering and unpacking like when shit hits the fan, right? The conviction to stay the course when you are trying to build something of a higher purpose and yet life throws some curveballs at you. I think it's important for people to listen and hear stories about founders who are persevering and still kind of rising to the occasion, even after sometimes life knocks you to your knees. So if you don't mind getting right into the trenches with me, I want to kind of take that journey with you.
I'd be thrilled, man. And the story goes way back. So you might have to dial me in and out depending on how deep I go, but I'm ready to rock, Chase.
Bring it. Like I always love to go to the origin story. So like you've been running Hemmings House that does a lot of incredible work. And I'd love to hear about some of the projects you're doing, as a filmmaker, storyteller, producer. But let's go back to young Greg for a moment. It's a moment I'm fascinated by. Like, what was it that inspired you to become a storyteller, to become a filmmaker? What was that like inflection point? Was there a moment or moments that you said, hey, this is what I want to commit the rest of my life to doing?
I never grew up as a big film buff. I was born in the Star Wars generation, but I wasn't the film guy at high school. I was the music guy. Like I played drums in a band, and I thought at that point I'd be playing rock and roll the rest of my life. In grade 11, we had a media studies class, and I had an opportunity to make my very first video, which was a music video for my band. The music video was edited with 3 different VHS decks. I put something together and I was like, that felt so good, like editing rock and roll together. And I went to university for a year after graduating. I took a general arts degree and it was interesting, but I felt it was an extension of high school, which is okay. And then I bumped into a friend at a Christmas party and I was like, man, I haven't seen you in years. What have you been up to? And he goes, I've been going to film school. I was like, that sounds way more interesting than what I'm doing. So I ended up following him to film school in Ontario, and I did 3 years of actually working with film, like shooting on film, cutting on film.
Celluloid, nice.
So yeah, film celluloid and using the Steenbeck as an editor. Long story short, I graduated film school loving film, loving documentary, loving
Yeah.
putting images to sound. So I found my passion at film school. Immediately started working in the film industry as a IATSE unionized camera department guy. And I did that for about 3 years. The culture was awful. It was shame-based learning. It was bully culture.
Yeah, been there.
For me to be bullied for the first time in a real way as an adult, this is weird, man. Like I'm a creative person. Like this industry doesn't deserve me if this is the way it's going to be, because like it's sucking the creativity out of me. So it was a very difficult time in my life, and I decided to quit after working on a big sci-fi series for a few months. I ended up finding myself very quickly on a sailing vessel in the Caribbean. We sailed goods all around South America, the Caribbean, all by the power of wind. It's really where I first understood the power of the triple bottom line. But the one interesting thing is before I went, I bought my first video camera, even though I thought I quit the film industry.
You never really quit. You
Oh,
can put it to bed, you can hide behind it, but it's that itch that never you can never fully scratch.
what I realized is I'm doing this adventure. A lot of people don't have the privilege of doing an adventure like this. I want to capture it. To this day, I've not edited that footage, but capturing all the moments felt so good to me. I was like, I'm not quitting anything. So after a few years of living in the Caribbean, I came back and I started with my little video camera. I started shooting rock and roll videos, but I quickly became the guy in early days of early digital videography and HD videography. I shot the first Bonnaroo in Nashville.
No way.
I made documentaries about those scenes. And I started to build a little reputation about being a music-based documentary guy. But as I was building that art, I started getting hired to do corporate videos. And I was like, oh, I can actually start making money doing this. And I was like, I'm back in, baby. And my goal when I was working in the industry was in the big industry. I was like, if I'm ever a producer, I'm going to change this. Talk about shit hits a fan. I don't want that shitty culture anywhere close to the sets that I have. So we've created a real kind of loving environment in the film industry, supportive, creative. And many years later, here I am a year and a half ago producing a $24 million sci-fi series for Sci-Fi Channel, a zombie series for NBC Universal, doing exactly the same thing that I was being bullied at 25, 30 years ago. And here now I'm finally the producer, I'm finally the boss. And I was like, this is my chance really to see if we can make change. And it was a really cool experience to be able to actually see that full circle moment. And now, as a parallel though, I've been building this original content company called Hemmings Films. So we do documentaries, TV series, that's scripted and unscripted. Like we do blue chip documentaries, etc. Everything for the television and streaming broadcast world. The other company is Hemmings House, and that is the company that is the 1% for the Planet member, the B Corp. And we other brands and agencies, telling really great corporate stories, essentially. In that company, that I've got a lot of employees in that company, and I care about it deeply. And it has gone through some tough times in the last 3 years. So after 20 years of growing a business, you're like, things are working, and then bam, something awful happens, and it stops working. What do you do? I'll pause there.
I mean, there's so much I want to unpack already. There's like, I mean, a lot of parallels to kind of experiences I had early on in the film career and really kind of sort of sort of dampening that dream. You go in with eyes wide open and maybe a bit of naivete of what it's going to be like. But, I too kind of went through, I had a brutal sort of rite of passage in the entertainment world, working for some pretty toxic people and producers and sets. And yet when you're in love with something, you still find a way. So, it sounds like you had to step away to kind of recenter and reconnect and then step back into it. So from a macro perspective, right? How are you trying to change things as a leader now, as an entrepreneur, as building your own business in a way that wasn't shown to you when you first started, right? Like, I'll be the first to say I've learned more about what I don't want to become as a leader and a business owner from people that I've unfortunately learned from, especially in that business, which isn't the best way to learn. But what have you taken from those hardships, those experiences, and how are you trying to change things now for the people that work with you and work for you?
I think you nailed it. It's like really observing the things as a young filmmaker, just fresh out of film school, working on those big sets of 150 people or whatever, and just observing how the system works, the amazing parts of the system, like how efficient everything is, but also to keep that efficiency, you can be a total asshole to the people under you, or you can be like a coach. It's not about getting off easy. You're still held accountable for your job. And if you're not doing your job, there are proper ways of getting people in line or get fired. That doesn't need to change. It's the approach that humans have to other humans, you know? So I saw a lot of power dynamics back in those days, and it was all trickle down. Like the person that would bully me was probably bullied by their head of the department, and vice versa. Producers at the top, you know, pushing really hard to make sure every dollar is spent properly and like, all that sort of thing. But it really is, it's a spiritual decision to be like, how are we going to build culture where it's not about being lax, but it's about pushing people, as hard as you can, but in the most loving way that you can, a supportive and coach-like way. And for me, over 20 years of building this business, it's all about what I consider shared leadership. It's about, I'm not the boss. I might own this thing, but I surround myself by initially young people that didn't know it as much as I did. And their job was to get better than me really quick. Like that was their job. And it happened over a few years. I was like, okay, finally, I'm surrounded by people that are more talented than I am, better than I am, everything. And the business is starting to work. So that's not easy for everybody to do, but I just think, witnessing what I did of that power dynamic of the top down, trickle down, stress system, I was like, I don't want to create that again. So I've worked hard. And I got to say too, Chase, on certain projects where even though I might be the producer, sometimes you lose control because you're working with teams you haven't worked with before, and that shit starts to come back in, and it really hurts my heart when that happens because like here I am talking on podcasts about building safe sets, creative sets, all this stuff, and once that trust gets eroded with me, I get really upset. Have to pull grown adults into my office and tell them to stop being idiots to the people that they're employing because essentially they're my employees too, so anyway, it's happened. So it's not a perfect track record of me saying, oh, we got a perfect culture, but man, we've tried hard and it's been noticed.
Yeah, I think it's a constant course correction, right? It's like you might start off with this beautiful, pristine mission and vision of what you want it to be, and you can toil over that and really kind of sow this culture and this sort of identity for your business to be better than at least you had it, right? But then again, shit hits the fan, stuff happens, real business pressures occur. So a lot of founders start off with this mission that is pure and ideal in a way, but then reality shows up. Right. So you've got things to think about: payroll, clients, deadlines, cash flow, all these like little panic moments and panic ingredients. So talk to me about some of these times where your business started to face these challenges when that mission and that vision was like truly tested. And then how did you navigate those rougher waters to kind of continue to say, hey, in spite of all this, we can continue forward in a healthy way or not just completely devolve into chaos?
I'm living in the middle of it right now of a adventure that has been probably 3 to 4, almost 4 years in the making. So right after COVID, if you remember, there was this period in the communications world that was really good because like everybody was communicating, like we're still here. There's so much, like we had banner years during the pandemic and shortly after, which was not what we were expecting. We were preparing for the worst, but we had a few really good years. Then I ended up getting COVID for the first time, and it just didn't go away. I ended up getting what is understood as long COVID, and it lasted, I'd say, a good year and a half of me being really fatigued and tired and just exhausted. And I am by nature an incredibly creative person. And what I mean by that is I need to be doing something creative on a regular basis to keep my soul happy. So creativity to me is, writing. I wrote a travel article in the newspaper weekly for 10 years in the newspaper. I had a podcast called the Boiling Point Podcast for a decade, and that was weekly episodes of impact businesses. I put on events, like a lot of like impact events, in the B Corp world, social venture network world. We're always putting on gathering people for, really good discussions about business. These are all creative outlets. I played drums in a band, in a dad
Yeah.
band. When I got tired, I just stopped doing all those things. All of them. They just fell off. I wasn't motivated to do them, and I didn't put any leadership towards keeping them. But what I started to realize is it's almost like stopping going to the gym and your muscles started to atrophy. When I stopped doing creative practices, I started to kind of swim around that kind of danger zone of the beginning of a depression. And I was like, what the heck? I'm so not motivated to do it, and what happened there is me as a business leader, I started checking out from the business too. And I ended up losing a couple of key employees. And with that, right around the same time, we lost 2 bits of annual client work that we were typically expecting. And not for any reason of us, but the clients ended up, taking their work to a different city and whatever. But it was something we enjoyed for 2 or 3 years, a significant amount of revenue. The right thing and the more humane thing to do would have been to downsize immediately. And that's a strange thing to say because humane is like what I thought I was doing, which is I got to keep all my people. And we had 14 or 15 full-time employees. And I kept them on for about a year long, trying to just hustle to get work going with no energy, exhausted, not inspired. And as a result, other people had to leave. It just wasn't working. So we went through a turbulent time of what I would consider negative energy because, I talk about this loving culture. It's hard to ask people that you love that you don't have, or tell them that they don't have a place at your business anymore. Like it's the worst feeling in the world. And it's not because of their ill doing, it's just because the business isn't working. So I was going through that slump and I was like, what the hell? Like everything's falling apart. We've built this company for 20 years. We're one of the biggest companies of our type in all of our region of Canada. And so then a friend said, Greg, you got to get out and do something for yourself, creative. I was like, what? What are you talking about? Go make a film for you. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. What are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, I'll support you in it. I'll invest a little bit of seed money. You need to go make a documentary with no clients, no broadcaster, just do something for you. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want it. Like that's effort and I'm tired. He's like, dude, you got to do it. So I was like, okay, I did it. So really quickly, I was like, I got to figure out what I'm passionate about. And back in the early days, as I said, I always loved making rock and roll music films. Like I want to explore the healing power of music as a documentary subject. I went to Toronto and I got some really great people on camera, some neuroscientists, some musicologists, some music therapists, just to kind of explore that nugget of what is it about sound and music that is so special to all cultures and all religions. And that led to me creating this neat little film that was more about neuroscience than anything. And it was about finding flow states as a musician. What is it about when musicians get on stage and they lose themselves? They lose track of time. Everybody's in sync. They don't have to even look at each other, but it's like this one unit is happening and flowing and nobody's thinking about what they're doing. And it's a scientific study of group flow. So we all understand what flow state is, but group flow is very magical. When teams, it could be executive teams, it could be hockey teams, whatever. When teams experience group flow, magical things happen as a group, but inside their brains, even more radical things are happening. So we ended up making this little film where I got my guys in the band after not playing for 2 years. I said, will you guys get back together with me? I've got a neuroscientist coming from McMaster University, and he's going to bring his EEG headsets, and we're going to do an experiment to see what happens when we find flow state. So we did this experiment, and we made a film about it, and we played 12 of our songs in our rehearsal space, which is safe. There's no audience. 2 nights later, we played the exact same 12 songs in front of an audience. Now, in the rehearsal space, after every song we stopped, we did individually, we did surveys to see how we were feeling and what parts, all this sort of thing. We couldn't do that in the live environment, obviously, because you got an audience. But at the end, right when the show was done, we went backstage, completed a similar survey. So the data scientist was able to look at our brain waves, all of them, and analyze them based on our subjective responses. One other hilarious thing is we projected all of our brainwaves on a screen behind the band. So the whole audience, when
Nice.
we're getting into flow and when we're not. It was the most intense, hilarious thing. So the cool thing is that the data showed is during the safety of our practice, where if you screw up, you just stop and start again. There was minimal flow. When we had the risk of an audience there, because we have the skill level to play. You got skill, but if you got skill and challenge and
Yeah.
a little ingredients, that is how you get into flow state. So when we had the energy of the audience giving us a positive feedback loop, and we were in there together with a certain level of risk and challenge and skill, our flow state moments were through the roof. And anyway, all this to say is at the end of this, I felt so good after playing music again. And not only that, when I started editing this little film together, I remembered my early creative love of putting together film to music. And I was like, this is so good. All right. I'm remembering. So I'm starting to get my juices back a little bit. And then I'm so sorry. This is such a long story. You tell me to shut up anytime.
No, bring it.
Then Hemmings House, my commercial production company, got hired to do a really nice piece in Peru about their sustainable fisheries. So we did 3 micro documentaries down in Lima. And because the way our company works is we've got great crew and DPs and all over the world, right? So I've got a guy in Peru who I've worked with in the past, and I called him up. I was like, hey, man, can you help me with this? Help me crew up. Let's go do this thing. When we're down there, I'm telling him about this little short film that I made about the band and the neuroscience. And he's like, Greg, a good buddy of mine lives up in the Sacred Valley in Peru, and he's doing the exact same thing, but instead of flow state, he's putting EEG caps on like medicine people and like plant medicine practitioners and people experiencing ayahuasca or wachuma. And I was like, that's crazy. He goes, you're here. Do you want to come up and try it? And we could film it like you did with the band. And I was like, yeah, the answer is absolute yes. I'm on a journey right now, a healing journey of some sort. This is the right time. So they agreed, and I had this beautiful man. He's a Quechuan, I guess they don't call himself shaman, but a Wichinero. And he led me on this beautiful journey up this very long, long mountain hike. I think it was a good 10-hour hike up a mountain, like high altitude. My heart was beating because there's minimal oxygen. And we measured my brainwaves the day before at the top of the mountain when the medicine from this plant called wachuma or San Pedro cactus, when it was kicked in at the highest. We measured my brain again, and then we measured my brain the next day. And the first measurement showed a really scattered brain, like really a busy mind. During the apex of the psychedelic journey, you could really see high concentrations in parts of the brain that are really showing creative thought and, groundedness. And then the next day, my brain map showed what looks like a very level, peaceful, well-balanced brain. And when you do something like in a safe environment, a psychedelic healing journey, you feel that something good has happened, right? But then when you can see the data, when it's actually, you're like, okay, that's really cool. Not that I need to see the data, but the fact that
It's validating. It wasn't just all in my head and
right,
trip.
exactly. So I edited that piece together and I was like, I've got 2 of these things now. There might be a series here. And I was like, I've never really put a lot of attention to YouTube. What if I make a YouTube channel and I'll do more of these? So I did. So I started a YouTube channel. It's just look up my name, Greg Hemmings. It's Greg Hemmings Official because somebody else took Greg Hemmings. It is my Rewiring the Muse documentary series. And I've got 7 episodes so far. And I did sound healing retreat in New York. We did the brain mapping again. We did several brain science things. Moving forward, it's really more so going to be just focusing on creativity. What are the practices we can do to stay creative? So I've launched this YouTube series this year. I'm having a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of great feedback. People are mostly in the leadership spaces, like entrepreneurs, CEOs, people who are, mid-age, almost 50. This is a conversation we're all having. It's like, I'm just not inspired anymore. I got to tell you, I am getting my inspiration back. I'm getting my muse back. My business is starting to kind of get back on track too. We're still in the rebuilding phase, but it's like my energy as a leader is back. And I was like, there's something here. And I'm not a business leadership facilitator or anything like this, but I do think that there's something in here that I'm packaging up, that I can package up and share with other leaders at some point. I don't know what it is yet. Like there's a framework here of creativity and why it's so critical to, even if you don't consider yourself as a creative person, You are creative. Everybody's creative, whether it's working in a garden, building a deck, whatever the heck it is, baking a cake, making bread. That's all creative acts. And stuff that's happening in the brain when you're doing creative acts is very important for longevity, very important for us to be able to show up as our best selves. As I'm exploring this through the form of documentary, little micro documentaries, I feel like I'm building something that is eventually going to be worthy of sharing wider. So yeah, anyway, that's a long story, Chase. Sorry about
No,
that.
I mean, look, you just kind of took us through the full arc of where you were, kind of hitting sort of this peak in terms of your success and things are going great. And then life threw a curveball at you, right? Kind of brought you to your knees, which I think a lot of us have been through, but it's how you respond to it. I mean, you're the archetype for this framework, for this method, for this reinvestment in ourselves to rediscover our purpose, to rediscover our creativity. And
Absolutely.
so I think that is something that I speak a lot about. I think is really a movement, sort of a generational sort of shift that we're going through. This is not just a trend of, quiet quitting and burnout and all these different things. This is something that I think has been bubbling under the surface for a long, long time culturally. And people
Hmm.
haven't always had a safe space to raise their hand and say either, hey, I need help, or I don't have all the answers, or I need to slow down to reset so that I can reinvest in myself. But you've clearly just proven that, and I love just saying the phrase, when shit hits the fan, because it's just fun. Sometimes the best medicine is stopping, slowing down, reconnecting with what your true passion is, your true motivation is. For you, it was the music, it was the storytelling, it was the filmmaking. And look at all these other kind of things that came into play. And I'm a firm believer that the rest of this business momentum will soon follow, because I think energetically you've given back to yourself. You're now sharing with others. And I think the rest will manifest. But I'm glad you shared that with us, because that's probably one of the hardest things to do as a business owner is give yourself the time and space to slow the fuck down and to do something that is a passion project, dare we say, right? Like the reason you got into building this business in the first place was from this passion. But as you said, make a film for myself. We're like last in line. We're like that barefoot cobbler. We're the last to do for
Absolutely.
ourselves what we do really well for other people. And I'm glad to hear that this is clearly recharged you, given you that sort of fresh perspective, and hopefully a little bit of a kick in the ass to people listening, that to at least think about what that is for them. At least consider, what is it that I love or used to love, or what got me into my business in the first place, or
Mhm.
what lights me up, because it is way too easy to kind of say, maybe later, maybe next year, maybe when I reach retirement, maybe when I, hit this imaginary benchmark of success. No, the time is now, because otherwise, and in this case for you, it was a little bit of health as well. You're going to hit that burnout. You're going to hit that moment where it all comes crashing down on you. And I had this conversation with another guest, another podcast. So intervene, you've got to be your own intervention.
You're so right. And the cobbler's shoes analogy is so perfect. I also want to make a point that a lot of your listeners will agree with. A lot of us entrepreneurs, you're right, got in because we were the practitioner. And we were the practitioner probably because we really enjoyed what the thing is that we did.
Yeah.
Eventually, you build a business, and a lot of us fall into the trap because sometimes you have to do it, really starting to focus on your time on building the business, and you have to hire people to do the craft. And that's what happened to me. I remember it very clearly. It was probably, I bet you it was 15 years ago. One of my employees says, Greg, you're a good filmmaker, but you taught us to be great too. You got to stop doing this and get out there and start making friends and start getting more clients. And I was like, it was hard to hear. I was like, you're right. I got to see the business as a creative work in its own. And I did, which was great. However, it meant I stopped doing my craft. So my mistake was, yeah, the answer should have been yes. I'm going to work on growing the business and getting customers, but also I should not stop my practice, and I did. So I think there's something interesting there that I think a lot of people could probably relate with, but maybe new entrepreneurs could listen to that and take heed.
I think it's an important designation. It's how do you nourish and nurture the business? That is your responsibility as a business owner, especially if you have people that were, reliant upon you and employees. But then how do you not completely sell out or check out from the reason you started in the first place? I think it's a very fine line. So
Hmm.
this comes down to being intentional with the work you're bringing in as well. I think early on, and I don't know if you face this as well, but early on you starting your business, you say yes to a lot of projects that maybe aren't aligned, right?
Yep.
Maybe aren't that beautiful visionary project you thought you would take on, but you do it because you got to keep the lights on. You want to build a business, you want to build a reputation, build experience. And that's okay early on. But at what point do you earn more no's? Do you earn more, hey, I'm not going to take on this new client or new project because it doesn't feel aligned with where we're going? And how do you navigate that? How do you say no to something that you know you might need and juggle the financial implications with the impact of, yeah, but if we do, this might be soul sucking and put us in the complete wrong place by the end of it if we make it through. What's your process and framework for those intentional yeses and intentional nos?
Oh man, I'll give you an answer, but I don't think I'm qualified because I'm still, after building a successful company for 20 years, I'm still battling with that. It's got everything to do with cash flow, which sucks because like when things are rocking and doing really great, you think about reinvesting in the company and doing really cool things, maybe add a little bit more marketing. But at that point, yes, we can say, no, I don't want to do that work because all of us want to say no to certain type of client work. All of us. Right. And we know the type of work we want to do. Like the stuff that fulfills us is working with other B Corps and, purpose driven companies and sustainability stories, social impact stories. But a lot of our revenue doesn't come from that. A lot of it just comes from, great clients and whatnot. But, wouldn't it be nice to be able to just focus on the project that we really want to do? But when things get tough for cash, you're right. You say yes to whatever it takes to keep the baby alive. And I'm still in that headspace. I don't know if it's a healthy headspace, but maybe it is. It might be cautious, but it's something that we're actively, aggressively working on right now. It's like, how do we just be able to put all of our attention and energy into the client work that we want to do? And then, and it's starting to work, I got to say, but like it goes like a roller coaster through the life cycle of a business. You get your ups and your downs and your ups and downs, and we've gone through so many of them that like we know what's coming up next, but I'm hoping the current uplift that we've got now is going to get us into that place. There is a concept around this called the innovator's gap. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, sure.
You build your way to where you want to get to, but oftentimes there is a cliff. And it's the innovator's gap that stops you from getting up to the top. So it's almost like if there was a bridge, that'd be great. But so many people get stuck there. And a lot of times it's cash flow that makes them slide back. And it's so hard to get over that innovator's gap. But if you have a way to do it through either cash or just being really creative with how you run your business, then it's golden, And I feel like despite the successes and whatnot, that innovator's gap, I've tried to jump over a few times.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough one, but
How'd that work out?
motivating to know that there's a mountaintop over there.
We're always driving towards something, right? And I think the prospect of not seeing it through, of not completing it, is like, no way. It's devastating, right? Or surrendering to something, which I used to think was a very dirty word. I used to be like, never surrender. But now there's certain things that I think intentionally you can surrender to, knowing that, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not this hill. Maybe it's something else for us. Knowing when to say no, when it might lead to burnout, when it might lead to, running things into the ground, when it might be just kind of a single-minded stubbornness to kind of achieve something because you have to just achieve it. I think it's kind of like knowing when to pick your battles as a business. But yeah, it's tough when you're kind of going through this revenue roller coaster. Things are good. Do we reinvest or do we kind of stay cautious and nimble for, a potential sort of downturn? But I mean, look, I appreciate you kind of being honest and saying, look, still figuring it out, because I think I certainly am. Most of us are. But I think that's okay too. As a leader, you don't have to have all the answers, right? I'm glad you said that versus, well, here's the thing that's, the perfect remedy, because then it'd be like calling a little bit of BS.
I can't it's not part of my makeup. I can't bullshit. Like, and if I try, I get caught immediately. I suck at lying and suck at bullshitting. So it was interesting at the B Corp Champions Retreat a few years ago. It was in Vancouver. I've seen all these people. It's like a big family reunion from all over North America. I'm like, how you doing? And I might ask, like, how's everything going with the business? I'm like, awesome, so good. And at that time, that was the beginning of my big downfall. And I was like, things aren't good with me. Like, I'm struggling. And then immediately the answer was like, yeah, me too. So you don't blame people for bullshitting. You're in a networking environment.
Yes.
But I ended up having people crying because they just have never had a chance to talk to people about their struggle. I'm like, this is where we need to talk about this stuff. We're a bunch of entrepreneurs. Let's be real here for a second.
Amen. I mean, I have said almost these exact words where we don't give each other as fellow entrepreneurs like the space and trust and grace to like just open up and share. We're so good at putting on the front of things are going great. We're busy. It's crazy. Like as a badge of honor, as if we don't say that, something's wrong. But then once you do have the courage, and thank you for having that courage to open up and be like, not so great. I'm going through a tough patch or a tough period. I need some help, right? God forbid we kind of raise our hand and show vulnerability. But once you do that and give a little bit of space, it's amazing how people lean in and the truth does come out. I think other people will not, I mean, many will naturally say, if there's trust, you know what, I'm feeling the same thing. And I think we need to do more of that. So I'm glad that you shared that, you had that experience. Because if you go to most networking events or conferences, 99 out of 100 would never even think of admitting or revealing any iota of weakness or things aren't great, things aren't busy, things aren't packed in my calendar. We got to break that contagion.
It's so interesting. Like we live in a part of Canada called Atlantic Canada, the Maritimes. So it's, traditionally lower income part of the country. Our economy was based on the fisheries for a long time, forestry, oil, things like that. So, but there's a certain strange humility that's not necessarily a positive out here. Like if you're a tall poppy, you get cut pretty quick as well. But there's a humility that almost forces people to be real. And if you're not real,
Interesting. We're so warped. I'm pitching to you as if like, and I forget that you're in Canada. I'm like, you know what? The whole world doesn't, and I don't live in the States anymore, but the whole world doesn't operate like American, like psychos that everything is perfect and scale all the time. Wait, but that's interesting. Tell me about how
well,
this
I was
might,
just saying, like, for years when I go to these conferences, and they're conferences with great people, like people in my alignment circles,
are they in Canada or are they in the
in the
States?
US, like my American entrepreneur ecosystem that I'm part of is awesome. There's so many great people, but everybody has always been doing so well that I feel like, what the fuck am
But
I
are
doing
they?
wrong?
But are they?
As I mature a little bit and start to really get to ask people real questions, I'm like, I think the American culture has been good at being excited for the win. And that's baked into the DNA of being American. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I think if you don't get to know Americans very well, you might think that everything's going great all the time and what are we doing wrong? But I'm starting to realize that let's just be human with each other. And it's great. So I need a little bit more of that approach. And I think some of my American friends,
I think we need a little bit more of that, humble pie from Canada as well. I mean, I'm going through it here living in Spain. It's a completely different dynamic. It's like a social faux pas to even speak about work, to even speak about, like, it's almost like a what's wrong with you and embarrassment when, if you were to say, and I don't, like, oh, I'm just so busy, I'm so crazy with work, because people have a completely different value system here. People
right?
have a value of quality over quantity, of community, of being outdoors, being with family. And I find myself with this weird mix of emotions being programmed in a certain code living in America for my entire life and thinking this was the aspiration to now going, wait, I had it all backwards. And now, again, everyone's different. But for me, in my state of life, I'm like, wait, I have to unlearn everything I thought I knew because I think I have to signal these modes of success, growth, busy. And I'm like, no, that's actually the opposite of what people are seeking here. They're seeking something more meaningful. So now the key is, how do you find the balance, right? Because I do believe you can do good and do well. You can profit with purpose. You can have a thriving, successful, growing business, but still, like you've shared, giving back to yourself along the way.
Absolutely. And I think there's a beautiful medium there. Like you say, like what a cool thing for you to be in a new country and figure out those values. And it's not about saying goodbye to the amazing values that you were brought up with. And like, I think that's kind of what I celebrate because my entrepreneur ecosystem is mostly in the US. I learned so much, and vice versa. Like, and that's why in this age of division that we're living in, it's like, I shake my head. I'm like, Canada and the US, we're cousins. Like we need to work together. We're beautiful together, you know?
Amen. We
But
need
right
each
now there's
other.
a big rift happening, and I don't think it's going to last a long time, but it is happening. But we need to work together to make sure that unity stays because we can do great things together in multicultures. Like what you're learning in Europe is incredible. I can't wait to learn from you by your podcast. What you're
At
learning.
the very least, man, it's keeping this open and honest communication going. Because unless we're having this real and open conversation with each other as peers, as colleagues, as whatever it is, there's no way for us to truly know what's going on behind the scenes. And I think that can be a really lonely and isolating place. Listen, I want to call back to something that you said earlier in the very, very beginning of the interview. And I think it's worth, I don't even think I've talked about it on this show, but it's a concept that I absolutely love. Describe for me, for us, triple bottom line, right? And how you try to navigate, because I think this is something that every business owner needs to know. We're used to bottom line as a singular, but triple bottom line is, to me, is the currency and concept we need to embrace, but not enough people know about it. So if you wouldn't mind, enlighten us. What does it mean? And maybe even how do you try to aspire and fulfill that within your role in your business?
Yeah, and I think the triple bottom line is such a great model of way that anybody can look at running their business. They don't have to be a B Corp. They don't have to be 1% for the planet. This works for any business. So the idea is we measure what matters in business. And traditionally, what matters is the bottom line. Did we make money or lose money this year? And that's a very important metric, incredibly important, because without profit, we're not doing anything, you know? So profit, making money, critical. Check. However, can we also measure how we made that profit? Is the way we're making profit good for people and the planet? So there's three P's. There's profit, people, and the planet, right? So what that means is if, let's say we're in the textile business, let's say this shirt here, and I have it produced in Bangladesh. Let's say it's made in Bangladesh. Is that factory paying living wages? Are those people being treated well? Those are questions that if you are triple bottom line, you care about people and you're going to want to make sure that the stuff you're selling and amplifying to your markets has a clean supply chain. And by the way, is that manufacturing company, are they dumping dyes and chemicals into the river? Okay, well, if they are, there's a challenge for you if you're measuring people and planet along with profit. So the whole idea is to balance things out, make sure that we make a great solid living, build wealth, but not on destructive, not on the backs of people that are in a destructive way, not on the backs of Mother Nature that's in a destructive way. It's very hard for us to do any type of business without being destructive. It's just kind of the way humanity is. How do we reduce that? You know, so it really helps us figure out the DNA in our companies when we're running the triple bottom line.
Thank you for sharing that. And because again, I think it's something that just needs to continue to be sort of echoed, like people, profit, and planet, right? And the truth is you can and should aspire to achieve all three. And the cool thing is, right, this is not just like a couple of guys, 1% for the planeters, sipping the Kool-Aid and saying, wouldn't it be nice? But the data, and there's immense amount of data behind this that prove that companies that adhere to that triple bottom line outperform the competition considerably, right? Their increase in sales, increase in customer loyalty and brand trust. It does ultimately, those other two P's contribute to that profit bottom line, right? So it's not just a nice concept to think about and say, well, what if? But there are companies out there that have been doing this and committed to it. I don't mean just like greenwashing, box checking. Those that are truly committed are seeing significant gains in all meaningful metrics in terms of true sort of company performance, like our true ROI on doing good, which to me is like something you probably couldn't have said a generation ago, but because you have this conscious consumer, you have this sort of stakeholder driven capitalism, people want to buy from, work for, support companies that do good and align with their values. And I think it's a pretty awesome thing if you can walk the talk.
Absolutely. And as you're speaking, I just got inspired for a fourth P, which is related to what we've been talking about, which is passion. So think about this, especially for small business. If the passion of the leaders is gone, how does that impact profit? I'm going to mull over that one. That's interesting. So there might be four
Do it.
Ps.
I wrote a blog on this a while back. The fourth P, I called it purpose, but we're saying the
Yeah,
same thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
The fourth P being purpose, because very much in the same things you just shared, and I've shared this like on this podcast and in white papers, there's incredible amounts of data. Purpose driven companies, for those very same reasons, do good and do well, right? Increase margin, increase market share. People want to pay more, willing to pay more for products from purpose driven companies, right? The best and brightest minds want to go work for those types of companies. So I agree with you. There's that fourth P that we can jam on and add to the
I
mix.
love that. That's so good.
We've kind of covered a bunch of bases, but you've clearly you're living proof and testament to doing great things in the world, creating a lot of good, creating great content, but finding giving back to yourself and refining that purpose along the way, being like a key ingredient. So when shit hits the fan, it's like maybe look inwards a little bit and put on your own oxygen mask first.
Absolutely. Nailed it.
So, in summary, to wrap it, right, kind of the final question I like to ask everybody on the show, but I've got a caveat, a twist to it. It's in one sentence, in one line, in one thought. How do you describe your purpose? But I want to ask you that your purpose in this particular season and chapter of your life.
So I'll start by giving you my company's purpose statement that we put a lot of time in figuring
Love
out.
it.
A happy and kind world fueled by passionate storytelling. I put that together years ago and it really has guided us. So what's a happy, and I've changed it a little bit to happier and kinder because it's kind of impossible to imagine a happy world, but like, is the things that we are contributing to bringing happiness to communities, or like, is it destructive or is it life-giving, So that's a major thing. But for me, just analyzing what I've been going through for the last 3.5 years and some of the practices that I've been figuring out, like I believe so much in small business and entrepreneurship that it's going to suck once we start losing owners of B Corps or 1% for the planet people because they just get burnt out. It's going to suck. And I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but we got to make sure it doesn't happen. We have to make sure artists who are trying to make a living doing what they're doing continue to thrive and build wealth based on their art. But this stuff requires a community and it requires, sharing of information. And I think I've got a piece to add to that. So that's fueling me right now is like, how do I give back with my experiences as a creative professional to make sure other creatives are feeling spiritually whole and doing the practice they need to do, the creative practices to keep them moving forward with a smile on their face.
It sounds like the work that these passion projects you're working on right now are exactly that vehicle. And it's cool because I'm glad you shared the company purpose because there's very much alignment between those two things. So kudos to you for being intentional about that and leading, with that passion. So thank you for taking the time, digging deep, sharing the stories. Where can people see more of your work? Check out.
Yeah. So both of our websites, so our commercial company, production company is hemmingshouse.com.
Yep.
Our original content film television company is called hemmingsfilms.com. Love it if your listeners could check out my brand new YouTube channel and give me a subscribe because we're still tiny, but you can see all the Rewiring the Muse documentary series at my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Greg Hemmings Official. And then obviously I'm active on LinkedIn, both for Hemmings House LinkedIn and my personal LinkedIn, Facebook, all the other things. I'm not on Twitter. I am somewhere, but don't bother.
It's okay.
And so find me on the socials and reach out anytime.
Amazing. We'll put all the links in the show notes and you guys can go jam with Greg. I've watched a couple of the YouTube installments. They're incredible. It tweaks the sort of the creative side, but also the science side, which is what I love. So thanks for putting it out there and I appreciate the time.
Awesome, Chase. Thanks, brother.
Thanks for listening to In Pursuit of Purpose. If this episode helped you, please follow the show, leave a quick review, and maybe even share it with someone who's been building something meaningful of their own. And remember, you are more than ready for this next step. Head over to my website at chaseryanfriedman.com and you can start building your own purpose positioning strategy, explore free resources, and even find more inspiration for the road ahead. I'm Chase Friedman. Onwards.